Time to smash it up, everybody. We're in the middle of December. We're getting near the holiday season. Aren't you in the spirit out there on Warchant TV? Welcome into the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis here on Warchant TV. Hit the like button as you enter, won't you please? He's Ira Schoffel, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. And Ira, we had the countdown clock to the offseason. There's only a couple of smashes left at most after this one before we get to 2025. Where did the time go, man?
I'm ready for it all, buddy. Let's not slow it down. Let's keep our pedal to the metal. And it's again, as fast as we can get away from the rearview mirror of 2024, I'm all for it. Every positive development now is something to be celebrated.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yes, 2024 can just go to hell, and let's all get it there. Together, everybody, one moment at a time on the Smash. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things, news for Florida State on the team front. In just a moment, we'll be joined by Dominic Robinson, lead football analyst for Warchant TV. He will be joining us, I'd say, in about 25, 30 minutes. He's out in L.A. at the moment, so it'll be from off-site. We look forward to having Dominic on board. If you've got questions for him, put those in the chat. Questions for Ira and I, please put those in the chat right now, and we will be getting to those here shortly. But one of the news notes of the day is related to Florida State's defensive line, Ira. I think it was about 90 seconds before we signed off on the Jeff Cameron show from 1 to 4 on Warchant TV that Florida State released a video announcement that defensive tackle Daryl Jackson is going to be coming back for 2025. No NFL future yet. He's coming back to the program for another season. That's a big get, sir. What say you, and what was your initial reaction when you heard the news?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an awesome get. Judging by some of the reaction on social media and some of the texts I got and some of the responses on the tribal council, there's, anybody on that defensive line took plenty of arrows for what happened this season. And Daryl, obviously he and Josh Farmer, their dalliances with the transfer portal over the last couple of years, and then the team just not playing all that well made them easy targets. But man, if you could have either gotten one of those guys back, I think it was huge. You don't have to be a football expert to know that dudes that size and that strong with that athletic ability don't come around very often. Did he always play great in 2024? No, but there were times he was dominant. I mean, that Miami game, I thought he was phenomenal. And, I thought there were moments in other games as well where he played really well. And if you look at the PFF numbers, he grades out in terms of like quarterback pressures and quarterback hurries and hits, as well as many of the top defensive tackles in the country. And again, you're not going to find that guy in the open market. One of our friends I was texting with, was kind of, again, just saying, he hasn't lived up to all the hype. And it's like, well, first of all, think of the position you're talking about here. It's not a position where necessarily going to rack up crazy statistics. A lot of times those guys are taking double teams so that the ends and maybe the linebackers can make plays. It's not his fault if those guys don't do that. And I thought he played really well for much of the season, especially the second half of the season. And like I said, if you were trying to get a guy like that out of the transfer portal, I can't even imagine what it would cost. I'm hoping Florida State's investment might not have been quite as substantial. Maybe they're getting a hometown discount, but I think it's a great place to start for this new defensive coaching staff.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an important investment to make. This is, I said it in the video that we recorded at the time, there might be a veteran or two who come back, and I will say, if I'm on that reaction video, Ira, that I got to believe it when I see it in terms of the production. I didn't get that sense out of Daryl Jackson. And you go to practices in season as much as you do in camp. But in camp, either in spring or in fall, I didn't get the sense that there was any complacency from Daryl Jackson. I thought he was motivated. He and Odell Haggins worked very closely together this season. I thought Odell did a good job of getting consistency out of Daryl. Relative to some of his segment mates on the defensive line, I thought he was one of the guys that was most locked in. It's just that the fruits of the labor, the shine, didn't come for him until the back half of the schedule. I think the second half of the season, he might have been Florida State's best defensive lineman. And Josh Farmer was pretty good all year long.
And I thought Adam Fuller had a really good observation. I thought probably midway through the year when we started talking about Daryl starting to kind of flash. I think it was probably the week or two after that Miami game. And Fuller made a comment I thought was very insightful. He said, Daryl hasn't played, he hadn't played football in a year. So over that year, he played some in the Georgia game, but that was a cluster. But he really hadn't played football in a year since transferring in from Miami. And so he played for one coaching staff at Maryland, one coaching staff at Miami, then comes here, practices a whole year, and does not really get to play. Then they go out early this season, and he's not having success, and sounded like he was getting frustrated and maybe not following the same fundamentals and techniques that he had been working on the whole year, because it just wasn't working. Like he was hoping he was going to have this big splash early in the year, and it really wasn't happening. So now he starts doing things maybe out of pocket a little bit because he wants to make plays. And he actually compared it to Braden Fisk. He said that Braden Fisk was very frustrated for the first part of that season, his 1 year in Tallahassee, for similar reasons. Like he wanted to make plays and they weren't coming, and it got frustrated. And then once he finally relaxed and got back to doing what he was supposed to be doing, the numbers took off, and he felt like Daryl was seeing the same thing. So, man, I'm really excited about it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Daryl Jackson's going to be a first round pick next year, but I think the opportunity to get him back, I mean, it's just huge. You could not. I don't think Florida State's in a position, even if the money wasn't the factor. Florida State's not in a position to attract that level of a defensive tackle, I don't think, in the open market. So, I mean, I just think it's huge. And to your point, I think Daryl's a good kid, like always been very likable. One other thing that I think, and this is just a hunch, but Daryl and Josh Farmer have been together forever. They were teammates at Gadsden County High School, teammates here at Florida State. I always got the sense, and I'm not pretending that I'm like, intimately close to those guys, but I always got the sense that Josh was the leader and Daryl kind of went along with Josh. And I think Josh was the higher level rated recruit coming out of high school. Josh was the one that got offered by Florida State. Daryl did not get offered by Florida State coming out of high school. I just felt like he was always kind of Robin to Josh Farmer's Batman. And I wonder if being the guy, or being, kind of out of Josh's shadow might be really good for him also. So, we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out.
Well, what'll be really fascinating to me is schematically, how exactly did they use him? Now, Tony White has multiple fronts. It's not like it has to be a 3-down look. They could have 4 up front. But Daryl isn't just like a Vita Vea like we have in Tampa with the Bucks, where you just put him over the center and then he can plug. Although that's probably a bad example because Vita's extremely athletic. How about Gilbert Brown? Let's go back to the 90s.
I was going to go with Tony Siragusa.
There we go.
But
chunky guys that you just need to line up over the ball, take on a double team, and somebody else will clean up the mess. He's athletic enough that he can play across the front in multiple places. It'll be fun to see what Terrence Knighton does with him. Pot Roast will be his new position coach. Odell Higgins is still involved with the program, but maybe that's a question tomorrow that Pot Roast will answer. Ira, we've got coaching press conferences beginning at 11 o'clock in the morning. So for anybody who's interested to hear from Florida State's new position coaches, 4 interviews tomorrow from the Moore Athletic Center, including Pot Roast Terrence Knighton. I wonder if he'll be asked about what his role might have been in bringing Daryl Jackson back, because I'm sure, Ira, part of it had to have been an interview with his new position coach. If Daryl wanted to enter the portal again, he could have. So he decided to stay at Florida State. If he was going to stay in the college game, he could have gone somewhere else. I wonder what impact Knighton had and what pitch he made to Daryl Jackson. We might find that out tomorrow.
Yeah, I have no doubt that he was probably a big part of it. And again, like last week when we talked to Tony White, the defensive coordinator, he went on and on. He didn't name Daryl and Josh Farmer by name, but he went on and on about those big, huge dudes that are going on to the NFL. And, he kind of wished them well. But, these are guys that have been around it. They know that you're just not going to find many dudes like that. And so I'm sure they were selling hard the idea of staying at Florida State and what they could do in that defense. And you'd like to think that I'm sure that they were sitting down with him, showing film of similar players of similar body type and composition that maybe they've used in different ways in the past. So yeah, man, if he wasn't sold on what they're trying to do defensively, I know some people are going to say, oh, he didn't get the draft grade he wanted. And that could be true. It might not be true. But the bottom line is he had other options. He could have gone into the portal, and a dude with those measurables and that tape, he would have had a long line of people interested if he didn't want to stay at Florida State.
Deep cut DC reference here from Spartanal. Robin now becomes Nightwing. That's a comic book reference. Ira, does that resonate with you, or does that go?
It goes way over. It was not a big comic book guy. I'm guessing the context though.
Yep. Yeah. The Nightwing becomes his own man. So the 4 coaches that Florida State will be presenting before the media tomorrow: Evan Cooper, the new safeties coach; Tim Harris Jr., pass game coordinator, wide receivers. He was hired just last week. Herb Hand, offensive line coach. I think there's going to be a lot of interest around that particular Q&A with Herb. And then Terrence Knighton, as we said, pot roast. Ira, I guess, outside of the questions, I know people are going to ask, how'd you get the nickname pot roast for Terrence Knighton? What do you want to hear tomorrow? What questions are you drawing up in the lab for tomorrow's availability around lunchtime over there at Moore?
Yeah, I think I'm probably a little bit more interested in the, not I'd say more interested in the offensive guys, but I am very interested in the offensive guys in terms of Herb Hand and Tim Harris, in terms of, what they, what kind of things they think, how translatable what they've done in offense will be to this, what, Herb Hand's thoughts are of the personnel here. I don't know if he'll be very forthcoming or not. But they do have some guys returning on the offensive line. And then defensively, I think it's mostly I asked Coach White about his defensive assistants, and I'll probably want to ask them questions about him and why they wanted to follow him here. It's not like those guys have been with him for years and years and years. Herb Hand has been with Gus Malzahn for many years and several stops. Tim Harris has agreed to work with Malzahn 3 times now. Those guys had really only been with Tony White for a few years, really a couple of years in Nebraska. So for them to make this move, just kind of, their thoughts on him and what they hope to do here. So now it should be fun. I'm really looking forward to meeting these guys. It sounds like, again, as you said, Knighton has the big personality on social media. But I've seen all these guys seem to be pretty charismatic from everything you've seen online from them in the past.
Dave in Bardstown wants the question to be asked about Herb Hand and Herbie Hancock. He says, so we're not going to talk about the similarity of the name of our new line coach. And Miles Davis, pianist composer of the late 80s hit song Rocket. Yeah, Herbie Hancock. See, now I'm a little bit later in the generations because Dave in Bardstown, I remember Herbie Hancock being a reference in Tommy Boy with Chris Farley when it says who signed the Declaration of Independence. Who was the first signing? Herbie Hancock. There will be plenty of fun questions tomorrow, but people are fascinated about the offensive line. It's all the questions we get about the transfer portal at this point. I think we've cultivated everybody to be looking at the trenches in the offensive line, and Florida State continues to host targets, a lot from UCF, many offensive line targets from UCF here on campus. But in terms of the schematics, the philosophy, how much of an extension of Gus is Herb Hand? Is he his own guy? You're going to get to see that tomorrow. And I look forward to that content being posted to the channel. For those of you that want to make some early lunch plans, those videos should appear in the feed here on Warchant TV around 11:15, and then moving forward for about the next hour.
Real quick, actually, going back to the Herbie Hancock thing, real quick, just so Dave feels appreciated. So, Tom, just a little history lesson, because I don't know if you really know it or not, but yeah. So when Rocket came out, it was kind of in the beginning of hip hop and rap in the 80s, but because a lot of people didn't know who he was. They thought he was like a young guy of that generation. And he really was, as Dave said, like a tremendous virtuoso musician. Had a whole career before that. It was just funny that he kind of grew to fame because of that song, which was, so people thought he was like part of that generation. He really wasn't. And so anyway, I just want to give a shout out to Dave. Good history lesson there, buddy.
We appreciate it, Dave. And yes, like you with the Nightwing reference, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure he was great. But we will be covering all that tomorrow. Today's news from the coaching side came from Mike Norvell, a report released around, I think we were on the phone, 9:30, 9:40 this morning, confirmed obviously through the university. They put out their own release. But Mike Norvell reinvesting $4.5, well, whatever you want to call it, but restructuring of a contract, a reinvestment of sorts, $4.5 million over a 1-year restructure of his contract. And that's going to help start the machine, kickstart the machine as Florida State transitions to, more expenses, Ira, in the athletic department front, but significant dollars being committed by Mike Norvell to Florida State after a rough year. I think he read the room, and this is a smart move. What say you?
Yeah, no, I think it is. And it's really kind of a no-risk move for him. I mean, it's a good gesture, and I think it's going to be helpful as they, really as they move forward with, just kind of trying to raise more funds to deal with the greater expenses they're going to have with, I guess revenue sharing with the players, and then all the other expenses that go along with it. But if we did get the contract later, and Jimmy Sexton, his agent, and I'm sure his attorneys, they cover their bases too. So it is a good deal for Florida State. That $4.5 million would go to the kitty, and it'll be used for purposes that Mike Norvell and the athletic department deem fit for football. But if for some reason things go south next year and he's cut loose, they have to pay him back that money.
Uh-huh.
Or if it was like the year after, a part of that money. So anyway, it's a great gesture. It is a great gesture. And assuming he does not get fired, assuming they are successful, they'll never pay back that money, and it'll go towards the athletic program. But it was kind of handled well, I think, on both sides. Florida State, Mike Norvell gets to make a really good gesture that could help, that really will help the football program. And on the back end, his agents and attorneys make sure he'll be made whole if Florida State decides to go crazy and kick him to the curb next year.
Well, look, any dollar helps at this point. I think any booster rep or collective representative would tell you that any dollar makes a difference these days. But $4.5 million is quite the number.
Yes.
I think Brian Kelly committed $1 million. Mike Gundy restructured his contract with Oklahoma State after a very public standoff with Oklahoma State,
where he said he wasn't going to, and then came back and agreed. Yeah.
And so that, it cultivates more money for Oklahoma State's NIL transition. But 4.5, I mean, whoever came up with that number, that is a significant number and a significant contribution. So
that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I wasn't trying to downplay it. It is, I think you'd like to believe Mike Norvell is going to work out. He's going to be here long term, and that money was just a donation, which is what it is, and it will go to benefit the football team, no question. And yeah, man, it's I'd like, I'd like to be able to donate somebody. I'd like to be able to donate $45,000 to somebody, Tom, let alone $4.5 million.
I need to donate $450. We'll have a charity show later this week on Warchant TV for the children of the guardian ad litem. I mean, $450. I got to think twice. A lot of people out there on Warchant TV don't. Stay tuned for that. It is the holiday season. Let's see. Florida Man in Alabama is asking us a question that I don't know the answer to, Ira, but we'll have to talk. Will it be Christmas and pre-New Year's smashes? Monday of Christmas week, Monday of New Year's week. I would think we get together at least once before the new year happens. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be around, dude. So we're not going anywhere special. We're going to be hanging. I mean, it's going to be awesome. We're going to have the kids home. We're going to be having a good time. But yeah, I'm sure, if we have to adjust the time or something, we certainly could. But
maybe one with a little bit of holiday cheer. Why not? I haven't opened up a beverage on this show in a long time. I know that you're the master of the Don Julio. Maybe we could do a shot at Don Julio together.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Florida Man, Alabama. There's your answer. We'll get together at least once before the year is up. Questions for Dominic Robinson, I see, are filing in fast and furious in the chat. Please continue to file those in. He'll be joining us in 10, 15 minutes out from the West Coast.
But again, sorry to interrupt you, Tom. But before we get to the questions or the question portion of it, I did want to, and I don't know if anybody has asked about the Luke Croman Hawk situation. I never really got to chime in too much on that, and it was kind of later in the week. So if we want to chat about that a little bit,
it could be like Festivus. All right, you got some issues with the Luke Croman Hawk thing. You got some things you want to get off your chest, so go for it.
I just just because I was listening to Wake Up this morning, Aslan and Corey, and they were having their take, and I know you guys talked a little bit last week, but I just I see both sides of it, but I've really felt like, I don't know. I felt like Corey and I can hash out in headlines tomorrow, but it was just very, very much like, you totally get it from the Croman Hawk situation. And I get, the comments his father made, and Luke, I guess, has made some comments too along the lines of, all that they invested into Florida State during the recruiting process, and that it wasn't about money, and that, they felt like they got done wrong. I mean, the implications from that article in The Athletic were kind of like that they had been done wrong. I would just say a couple things. I just want to get a couple things off my chest, Tom.
Go for it.
Number one, so the efforts that they made to help build a recruiting class, that recruiting class last year, and they did. It was awesome. The Croman Hawks, remember, they went down to Charles Lester's signing ceremony. That was really cool. The relationships they built with Cam Davis. I think he mentioned in the article they made 20 trips to Tallahassee and back to try to build that class. And that's all well and good, and it's awesome, and you wish it would have worked out better. However, that was not like altruistic. It was to help build a team around his son. And that's that. The goal there was to try to recruit to help build a powerhouse team around his son. If it didn't work out, that's not anybody else's fault. They chose to do that. So I didn't love that. And then the other part of it is, in this day and age, like to sit there and say like this system doesn't fit me or doesn't. Well, first of all, I mean, how much time did they really invest in trying to find out if it would fit him? And then to say it didn't matter about the money, I mean, that may not be the determining reason, but we've talked to several people who say that, money was discussed, the numbers were large, and Florida State wasn't willing to go as high as they wanted to go. So anyway, I just want to get that off my chest. I didn't want, I'm fine with them having their piece and saying their piece, but I just pushed back a little bit on this idea that they were this, doing all this out of the goodness of their heart, the apartment they rented in Tallahassee, all these things. I mean, that's awesome. Nobody's mad at them for doing it, but you can't then throw it in everybody's face afterwards when things don't go the way you hope. So just want to clear that. I want to get that off my
You're not going to get an argument with me. I don't know if you heard Jeff and I have a back and forth about this last week. I'm like, I'm not playing violins for them. No, right. I'm not doing it, man. Like, look, your choices were to make 6 figures at a high clip and stick around at Florida State, develop under Gus Malzahn and see where it goes, or make 6 figures or more and go somewhere else. Gone are the days, Ira, where I don't know if you agree with this, so let me ask you. I have so much less sympathy for players, especially in a position that they're not walk-ons, that they're high-profile recruits. Man, no matter what path you choose, you're doing so wealthy. So, I mean, I have back in the day when it was true student, well, closer to something like true student athletes with maybe a couple of handshakes here or there and a couple of hookups. Okay, I can understand saying, look, we invested, this much money and we don't know if we're going to get it. You got the hell of a return on your investment in that situation, and you're still doing so. And I wish the kid well, and hopefully.
Yeah, and I'm not mad at them at all. The idea of then turning it around, trying to win this PR battle.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Thou doth protest too much. If you ever say it was never about the money, the first thing everybody's going to say is, of course it's about the money. Just don't even say that. It's like no disrespect intended, but. Well, yeah, here comes the slap. Again, Dominic Robinson will be joining us here a little bit on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, who is an outstanding sponsor, and he has been all year long. We hope we extend wishes out to the East Coast of the state of Florida. He might be fishing on a boat somewhere on a charter trip, Ira. He does love getting out on the open water, but Russ Voorhis also loves helping Noles with all of their insurance needs in the states of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. If you like to support people who support Florida State athletics and or you like to support people who support us here at Warchant TV, Russ Voorhis is your guy.
Yeah, no question. And especially, like we said, if you're in that Jacksonville area, it's much easier. You can go into his offices, but they're just as happy to help you if you can't get to that part of the state or that part of that part of Jacksonville. If you're in Georgia or Alabama, go to the website, russvorhis.com, russvorhis.com, and you can ask for information online, or you can set up a phone call, or you can go in the office and get a consultation, and really can handle all your insurance needs, answer your questions expertly, and please tell them that you heard about them on the Sunday Smash and Warchant.
We can talk
Monday Smash.
The Smash in many places.
You heard about the Smash and Warchant.
There it is. russvorhis.com is that website. And if you're on the East Coast of the state, go ahead. Stop by one of those brick and mortar stores because their customer service is fantastic. I can speak to that as a customer of Russ Voorhis services at State Farm. Ira, we can cross promote the video that Dominic Robinson did, who's going to join us here shortly, about Thomas Castellanos and looking at all 22 takeaways from that particular film, and tease an upcoming project where Dominic is breaking down Gus Malzahn's offense. That's going to be fun to do over the next little bit of the program. But let's cross-promote what's on the site right now with Coach Henshaw. Was this the final installment of the year? Are you going to be talking more to Coach Henshaw in the offseason about the transitions? And what did he have to say? What are some highlights of your conversation on one of the great features on Warchant with Coach George Henshaw?
Yeah, once we get past football season, it's usually pretty intermittent. Maybe one in January. We'll see. We'll just kind of see how we play by how it all plays. But yeah, this article today was mostly kind of starting off looking at the college football playoff landscape and these teams that are in the playoff and like maybe lessons that he takes away from looking at those teams. And really, one of the big ones was just the fact that, you look at these teams like in SMU, you look in Indiana, these teams that are not necessarily dominant programs, but they have good quarterback play and they have good enough line play for who they played against. And I think that was one of the messages he really was trying to get across is, everybody wants an awesome offensive line, everybody wants an awesome defensive line, but Florida State doesn't need to have Georgia's defensive line. They don't need to have maybe Wisconsin's offensive line. You just need to have what's good enough, along with a really good quarterback, to win in the league you play in and the schedule you play in. Like SMU obviously did not have the toughest schedule that they could have had, and so they were fine. But maybe if they had played a tougher schedule, it would have been more difficult. His point was, with the portal, you can get better pretty quickly, and we all have this dream of what we want our teams to be, especially at Florida State. When we think about the all-time great Florida State teams, you can be really good, you can be competitive, get in the playoff hunt with just a really good offensive line, good defensive line, and good quarterback play. And so that was kind of one of his big takeaways, just looking at this playoff field. Now that it's 12 teams have to get in, you don't have to be amazing to give yourself a chance to get into that playoff hunt.
No, agreed. That was one of the concerns looking at SMU's schedule before the season even started, Ira. It reminded me of looking at Louisville's schedule
the year before.
Yeah, you're going, man, they've got a couple of landmines here, but they don't really see the best of the conference. So if they can just manage, they'll be in a position. And to their credit, they developed and they grew as the season went along. But the setback for Florida State is opening with Alabama. As long as that game is within touch, you almost get credit for it. We know how that game works with playing SEC teams. But, I mean, they do have a couple of easier games scheduled in September. You could see where, momentum might build for if Florida State, starts 3-1 or, 3-2, 4-2, somewhere in there, that maybe this thing can grow and turn into exactly what they're hoping for, which is you don't need to do gangbusters in terms of flipping this thing from 2-10, but you got to win 7-8 games at minimum. And if they do that, Ira, I think that the momentum that you were talking about today on the JCS will be there for more returns out of the transfer portal, more support from the boosters and the collective, and then obviously a better recruiting haul as well. If you can recruit on being able to flip a team 5-6 wins improvement over one regular season to the next.
Yeah, and especially if you're Mike Norvell, and if you could say, listen, man, last year was a blip, okay? Because right now, it's like it's the fun we all play with numbers. Like right now, people are pointing out, okay, what's his overall record over the 5 seasons? And like, let's not focus too much on what these last 2 years were. Let's focus on the big picture, which before this season, a lot of us were writing off those first 2 seasons because of COVID and the transition. But now everybody's bringing those back up again. Well, if you have a good year next year, say you go 8-4, 9-3, now you can sit there and say, what's his record of these last 4 years? You just have that one outlier year in between, and then you kind of forget about those first 2 years again. So that's what we do. We kind of talk ourselves and make whatever argument we want to make. But it would be huge for him is then you go into the next year because, man, I'm of the opinion, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, and I'm going to keep saying it until I'm proven wrong. I just think pretty much other than maybe like 2 or 3 programs in the country, I feel like everybody else is going to be shuffling their deck every year, and it's going to be a whole new year, a whole new team that next year. You're going to have some returning parts, but overall it's going to be a much different looking team from year to year. And so if you go to 8 or 9 wins next year, 7 or 8 even, you show that progress, and then that helps you turn it around, kind of build on that for the year after. You still have to get the portal guys right. You still have to make the right decisions. You still have to develop the young guys in your program, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to be all guys who are returning from this team the year after. Yep. It's not like you're having to build gradually. You just have to show progress and then be marketable again as you go out to get players for the year after.
Yeah, agreed. Well, yeah, you're talking about a program like Alabama right now, who's quite a few high-profile kids have entered the transfer portal in the last 24 hours. And I'm looking at our On3 compatriots over there, and I'm seeing the replies on those announcents and those stories and those tweets, and it ain't pretty right now. People writing things like, I'm done. I'm like, oh, come on, get over yourself out there in that fan base. But it's Alabama. It gets everybody. Got Florida State worse than just about anybody else. But if you bounce back with a new coaching staff as well, Ira, you can look at the record for 3 years and then say, well, we brought in the right guys now. Now we have the right coordinators and the right message. we'll see about all that, and we'll document it on warchant.com, which you can join right now, and you can upgrade if you're already a subscriber. We don't want to only give promos to people who haven't subscribed to warchant.com before, but if you're a current subscriber, Warchant Gold, the ad-free experience, is available to you right now. There's a simple upgrade button on the top right of the screen if you're a subscriber at warchant.com. It'll lay out exactly what you would pay for the upcoming year to upgrade to an ad-free experience with great perks, like a $20 gift code from Garnet and Gold given to you at the moment you sign up. We will reach out to you, send you a code for a nice holiday discount of $20 on your next order. And then instead of 10% off all Garnet and Gold purchases, you get 15% off for the life of your membership at Warchant Gold. Upgrade today. It really pays for itself. I love these benefits that we can offer, Ira, with our partners over at Garnet and Gold, the only locally owned FSU store. I mean, those savings are real, and they can rack up pretty quick around this time of year, too, when you're trying to buy things for the Nole in your life.
Yeah, and everybody loves Garnet and Gold, and I mean, they do a great job. Guys been doing it forever. I mean, their staff there is excellent. They've got great customer service, like you said, because they are locally owned. And we're glad to partner with them. It's just cool that we have that relationship and we can pass those savings on.
So we see him in the green room. Our lead football analyst, Dominic Robinson. He's out on the West Coast. He'll be joining us here in a second. Is Ira going to be hanging out, or does he have dinner plans? I didn't ask you before we started tonight. What's going on?
Your guys' call, buddy. I'm happy to hang out for a little bit, let me hang on and listen to Dominic for a little bit, and then I may peace out at some point.
Okay, so sit in the green room. Wave at me if you're like, Tom, that's a dumb question. Ask this question instead.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. In 15 seconds, we will be joined by our guy Dominic Robinson here after this word from State Farm agent Russ Forrest.
Contact Russ Voris for an auto quote today.
There he is. What's up, Dominic? Nothing high profile going on in your life. How you doing today?
Hey, guys. I'm here. Happy to be here.
Where are you currently, Dominic? What part of the country?
I am in Los Angeles, California. I am at the W Hotel.
All right. Very nice.
And just finished sitting down with Deshaun Foster, who's a childhood Southern California legend. Obviously growing up here. It was really cool to spend some time with him and sit down and chop it up, and had a nice dinner last night. And great dude. And I hope they have some success over here at UCLA, because he's a good man.
He's also a guy who won out over Tony White for that particular job. Florida State's new defensive coordinator interviewed for the UCLA gig last year. And that's somebody we'll be talking about down the line, Dominic. But the series has kicked off, and we'll be taking your questions for Dominic here shortly. I'm sure there's one big one that we want to talk about as well. But the Thomas Castellanos video, we had a run of recruiting content yesterday, Dominic. So it ran this morning on the site, but your all 22 breakdown at TC went live this morning. Right. I do want to start with this from Nancy, who says,
so do I.
Dominic doesn't like the TC choice. Well, what say you to that statement?
I probably said in the video 3 to 4 times, we got a real one. Like I was going to start this segment with, guys, we got our quarterback. Like, I love the TC choice. There wasn't much out there. And I definitely said that when we talked about, hey, what guys fit in the Malzahn system. I said, man, to be honest, there aren't many that were going to be in the portal in relation to last year in terms of quarterbacks. There just weren't a lot of options, to be honest. And there weren't a lot of options that have anywhere near the athleticism that Tommy has. So to get Tommy, you really, it's a home run in terms of possibility. I see some Jordan Travis in him. I think I said in the video, I see some Kyler Murray in him. And I absolutely love the TC choice, Nancy. So don't put those words in my mouth. I did not say that. I never said that. I think it's a great pickup for our program, and I'm very excited to see Gus and Mike can do with him.
It's funny, we were breaking down, you're talking about first down signaling, that presence on the field. And out where you are, my Buccaneers played the Chargers out at SoFi yesterday, and they dropped 40 on Jim Harbaugh's Chargers. And Baker shows that same kind of moxie, the presence. That was something that you harped on in the video. If you haven't checked it out, be sure to watch it. It's a great in-depth dive on everything Thomas Castellanos. But you were harping on intangibles. You were harping on details of the position, where your eyes are in between plays, and all those things add up to something. If you could expound on that for the audience here tonight.
Absolutely. And I love that you use Baker as an example, because that's a perfect fit in terms of a guy who, he doesn't have one physical trait that jumps off the page. Can he make the throws? Yes, but it doesn't jump off the page. Is he extremely tall or big? Does he run extra fast? No. But he does have this leadership intangible. He has this charisma intangible. He has this ability for people to rally around him and behind him. Sometimes it's even guys on the other side of the ball. And when you see that, you can't quantify it, other than everywhere Baker goes, he wins football games. And that's why he's still in the league. They try to get him out of the league. They try to move him, and he shows up with the Rams after they move him, 2 different times, I think. And he wins a game where he has literally no preparation. Why does he win that game? There's a level of confidence in himself that when people look at you and you play the leadership position, the quarterback position, on every snap, there's no one person that gets more eyes than the quarterback. So when I look at you play after play after play, and no matter what's breaking down around you, you look like you're about to go for a big play. If I play defense or special teams, or I'm a play caller on offense or defense, that gives me the confidence to do my job a little bit better. And man, Baker carries that. It carries himself that way. Kyler carries himself that way, especially these guys with the smaller stature. You got to carry yourself that way, because people are gonna want to say, "Oh, he's meek. Oh, look at the Bryce Youngs of the world." They're gonna say, "Oh, he doesn't look like the way we want him to look." And so yeah, you got to have guys that inspire confidence in just the way that they carry themselves, their presence, their moxie, their ability to make plays off schedule when things break down, because of their confidence in themselves and their teammates. And so I was seeing a lot of that with Tommy, and I love seeing it on plays that weren't involving him. There was a 4th and 1 where he hands the ball off. It's just like, okay, this guy cares about his teammates, and he's emotional about the game. That's the other thing that you like to know, that a guy is emotionally invested. And I should take that back. Passionate. There's a separation between emotion and passion.
Right.
If you put too much emotion, you lose your brain. You lose your mind. You can't think clearly. You play with passion, you can separate the emotion and still play with passion. And when I saw that, I felt like I saw him playing with a lot of passion. So I'm excited about it. I think it's a great pickup, and I do see Baker's a good comp in terms of that. And I don't know about his play style, but
right,
in terms of the moxie, the confidence, the way that you carry yourself, the excitement when you have the ball in your hands, the possibility that any play can be a big play, regardless of the play call, is something that you need to have in the building.
Yeah, look, it's not going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers show, but if you got the moxie to do the Tommy Cutlets in New Jersey after you score a touchdown, I like you. You got a little something.
Love it. Love it. And I'm telling you, man, that means more to guys that play football than people think. Yeah. Like that, man, when you play on a team with a guy that's doing that in a position, in a non-traditional position, I expect that from my diva wide receiver, right? I expect that from my linebacker, who's a nut. I don't expect for the quarterback to take on the personality of the linebackers. Yeah. And so when he does, it inspires the room. It gets people going crazy. and it makes people play a level of inspired football that you want to have. And again, we saw it. We saw it with Jordan. That's why I couldn't, rave enough about how important he was to the program, because those guys played differently because of the type of leader he was. That was a different group because he inspired the level of confidence in them that made guys play above their paper. And you love to have that. When you have that, it's invaluable to a program.
He had the medals, he had the stripes, whatever analogy you want to use. I mean, there was that second quarter at Clemson 2 years ago where nothing is going well for them. I remember you did the breakdown on the back shoulder throw to Trey Benson that moves the chains on a third down. But then he ends up picking up a first down or two with his legs, battling through contact on a fourth down, and then they end up scoring a touchdown on that drive. And it just, look, they didn't score a ton of points that day. They needed a defensive touchdown. But that game could have been over if they punt in that moment. And that's where you lean on your quarterback, and you remember that the subsequent week after and the subsequent week. That's what Jordan was all about, man. And that's what Florida State is searching for, because they didn't have it this year. But they also didn't have offensive line play. It was really, really tough to watch. And that's where Brett's question comes in, Dominic. Great breakdown. He's already watched the video. How much does our offensive line have to improve in order for Thomas Castellanos to be successful? What do you think?
It has to improve a lot. And that has nothing to do with Tommy in terms of him being successful. It just has to improve. I will tell you, if I was a coach sitting in that room, and honestly, this is happening all across every level of football, is the reason why a Tommy is so big. It's so important to have guys like that. And heck, we saw it firsthand at USC this year, is when you have a guy who can make plays off schedule, you don't have to be perfect. The first play of the Tommy breakdown, he trips on the running back and ends up throwing, a dart that ends up being a 30, an explosive play for the offense. Well, that's supposed to be a disaster if that guy's not a great athlete. And so I've always said, and this applies to all sports, is like, if I have two guys that are anywhere near each other in terms of ability, the guy who's more athletic is going to play, because he's going to make me right when I'm wrong. I'm going to make a bad call. I'm going to call a poor coverage. I'm going to call a concept that doesn't work versus the coverage that we're playing. But the athlete, the guy that's more athletic, is going to be able to, clean up my sins. And so when you sign up a guy like Tommy, that's what you're doing. That's why you're excited, is because you're going, I don't have to. And I did a bunch of the breakdowns last year, and that's what I kept saying was Coach Norvell had to be perfect on calling plays. He literally had to be perfect. And a lot of times, even when he was perfect, it still ended up in disaster because it ended up with the ball on the ground because of a drop. He would scheme it up. He would set it up. They would run the play that was setting up the big explosive play, and then it would happen, and somebody would miss a block or the ball would be on the ground. So you got to have these guys that can clean up your sins, and having obviously with the quarterback touching the ball on every play, there's way more opportunity for him to make us right when the coach is wrong than anyone else that plays any other position. So yes, the O-line has to be better, but you sign up Tommy so that you don't have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. I do want to give people a taste of what's to come with the Gus Malzahn breakdown. We don't have to get into all the details. Obviously, the All-22 will tell the story as well. But just people are asking about offensive line a lot. I mean, I've got three questions queued up, and it's all about the offensive line. And people are concerned about the transfer portal and are enough guys coming in. And I understand that, Garrett, and I see you, Keith. But just in terms of the scheme and what Gus is asking guys to do, Herb Hand speaks to the media tomorrow, Dominic, for the first time since taking Florida State's job as an offensive line coach. Just what do you see from Gus's offense versus Mike's offense? What differences might you see in what offensive linemen are going to be asked to do? And in a personal opinion, do you like it more, or what do you think is the strength or weakness of what Gus might be asking?
Okay, so I love the Herb Hand hire. I think it's a great, I'm very excited for that, just in terms of what I see when I studied him is a level of versatility in terms of what they do schematically that we typically haven't had. We've really tried to kind of go blunt force trauma with counter. And it's like, if counter doesn't work, we just try another version of counter. And then we tried pin and pull, and then we'd go to, zone. We just go to zone runs. And from what I can see, the combination of Gus and Hand, or just Hand by himself, is that we're just going to run whatever our guys, our personnel dictates. For many years, it's power. Then all of a sudden it's zone runs. Then there's some counter. Then there's some buck sweep. And it's just like a little mix of everything. And I will say, just to answer your question, and then a lot of these questions that are coming in, when you do that and then you scheme and move guys around as much as Gus does, what you're trying to do is get the defense to play a little bit slower.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be as strong up front, because guys are continually playing laterally. They're not trying to penetrate vertically because they don't know where you're going to be.
Yeah.
And, if I can puncture counter by penetrating where the guard is pulling, then I can attempt to do that all game. I know that their favorite runs counter. They're 70% counter. So then my guys know how to, defensively, how to line up and play that consistently. But if counter all of a sudden is zone, it's all of a sudden buck sweep, it's all of a sudden outside zone, I can't just attack in one way, which slows me down. And now I can, I'm moving laterally instead of penetrating vertically. And you have a chance. Obviously, that helps with protection. That helps with offensive, or, that helps with pass protection. So that's what I see in terms of what I think Gus brings is so many changes in personnel, or really formations. It's not quite personnel, but it's so many changes in formation and then motion to make you play laterally, overloading a side to make you decide, are you going to play that side? And then are you going to leave this side alone? Because if you are, I got something for that too.
Right.
And that makes a defense be less physical and aggressive. And that's what you want. As an offensive coach, the first thing that I'm trying to do is take away your aggression. The second that I can get you playing passive, now I got you. And now, hell, if you want to run counter and get downhill on them, you can do that. You want to run, and in this case, I think it'll be power. We're going to see a lot more power than we will see counter, I think, going forward.
So that reminds me of the game in Dublin. Like, we knew all year long what Georgia Tech was going to be about in game one, because they had, I think, 9 returning starters on the offense, 4 starters on the offensive line, same quarterback. So you knew that the tenets of what they were running were going to be the same. Maybe they would have some tendency breakers for game one, but you kind of knew what they were about. And I got to tell you, what you're talking about, indecisiveness, playing lateral, second level defenders in conflict, the linebacker play, the safety play, the lack of triggering downhill, it was all there. Do you see maybe some similarities in what maybe Georgia Tech had run to what Gus is doing? Because that offense came in that day with a plan, and it looked like we were not ready to be physical and get downhill.
Yeah, they were phenomenal that game. And I've said it on the breakdown, and I may have said it here on Smash. I talked about, hey, Georgia Tech's going to win 8 games.
Yeah,
that's a good team, and I'm pretty sure they ended up winning 8 games or 7 games. They had a good year, Obviously, they took Georgia to the wire there at the end. But yeah, they kept us off balance with a lot of. They were doing the same thing, but so much shift in motion. They ran counter, I think, 23 to 27 times that game or something like that. It was just off the charts. And but they just were doing it in all the ways. They ran every form of counter you could possibly have. It was quarterback counter, it was GT counter, it was counter, it was a counter read, It was just every version of counter you can imagine, and from all different formations and motions. They'd motion away from counter, they'd motion to the counter side. It was counter RPO. He goes on and on. So yeah, that's when I watch Gus a lot, that's really what I see is like it's not a lot of variation in terms of the play or the concept, but the presentation just is what messes and slows the defense up. Because again, all of a sudden there's 5 guys over here.
Yep.
Well, I spent all season learning how to defend 3x1 and 2x2. There's 5 over here, and even though we practiced it all week, it's just unnatural as a defensive player. How do I fit counter when there's 5 guys, 5 offensive threats to the field? Even if we practiced it this week against scout team, it's way different when it's, the ones for another university, that are on full scholarship getting downhill at you. Just the angles are different. And again, this is what helps when you're not as good at blocking or you don't have the strength up front. It's you make the defense just think a split second longer.
Yep.
Just kind of consider for a second that it might be something different. Or again, the angle is going to be slightly different. And that was, I showed in Tommy's breakdown. There was a play against us where it was like 4 strong, and the angle was just enough that, Tommy's able to beat you, with his speed, because the angle just doesn't feel right, because I usually don't have 4 to a side or 5 to a side.
So we're going to finish the show tonight talking about ball, still talking about, we got some questions here on a 3-3-5. I see questions about offensive line play. Dominic, we had a very nice, clean relationship here, and it got awkward because, there's this elephant in the room. I told people on the boards, too, on the premium recruiting board at Warchant, look, I'm usually here to pin videos and update threads for Michael and Matt because they're the recruiting analysts and experts for us. But, I mean, I'm talking to Dominic about a high-profile transfer that he might know a little something about. And so here's the latest intel, and Duce is going to be visiting Florida State later this week. But it's the elephant in the room, so I just wanted to have a brief conversation with you on that. What's this ride been like for you versus what it was like on the high school trail? That's what Hawaii Noel wants to know. But then talk to me about that recruitment, as comfortable as you are, because we don't want to create any hype where there isn't. But, I mean, Duce is coming to Tallahassee, so Florida State is in the running here. Just tell us what you'd like to tell us about where that process is and what it's been like from your perspective.
I'll tell you, it's amazing, just like mind-blowing how much it's changed in just 2 years. And obviously I'm here, I have the show with you guys, and I'm aware of like what's going on, but I can't even put into words really to express how much the game from a recruiting standpoint has changed in just 2 years. It's nothing like it was when he came out and when he was being recruited. It's it's way, way different. All the coaches are different. The conferences are different. When he came out, there was a Pac-12. There were five power conferences, and literally, Saban was still coaching. It's just the whole thing is different, and all of it's different. It's been wild. I hate it for everybody. I hate it for these kids. I'm very, very, apathetic towards what they're having to go through. It's really, really tough. No 19-year-old should have to be doing what a lot of these kids are having to do. Obviously I'm very, very thankful that, my son is a very good player, and he's very, very mature. So he's handling it incredibly well. But my heart goes out to some of these kids who are getting, going in the portal, and they're, the 6 foot, 183-star wide receiver is jumping in a pool of 250 other guys who are just like him. and coaches are using and abusing that. They're taking advantage of guys. Guys are getting stuck, and they're leaving places that they shouldn't leave, and they're hoping to sign up with places that don't even have spots for them. So sorry, I'm going to went on my soapbox a little bit and direct it in a different direction, but yeah. But yeah, it's wild, and it's very different in 2024 than it was in 2022 when when Duce had his senior year.
I'll put this question up because Girl Master, I really like what you're doing here. I think Dominic will appreciate it. He's a man of nuance. Do you think Castellanos is a big enough name to bring in experienced wide receiver transfers?
There's an experienced wide receiver from Arizona that I know is a big fan of Tommy, and they've connected, and he definitely likes, and I'll say this just again, this has nothing to do with Duce in general, or Duce specifically, but just in general, it is incredibly helpful for all of these guys when they're going to pick a place to know the quarterback, like no matter what position, and then to be able to actually look at film of him playing with and against like high level competition, and so when you can turn on Tommy versus Florida State and see 300 yards passing and 100 yards rushing, as much as we hate that, as much as I hate that, it also fires me up as a fan, because I know that other 18 to 22-year-olds are looking at that and they're going, oh, Florida State got a real one. I need to consider Florida State as a true option. And that's been my concern with how bad this year was that the 18-year-olds, they had to get a name that had enough credibility and video that an 18 to 22-year-old can turn on and go, yeah, I want to play with that guy. Like that dude inspires me to want to play, and I want to go to a place that just had a historically bad season. That takes a lot. Like, you had to sign up somebody that was, had a lot of cachet. And again, the options there wasn't a Cam Ward out there. There wasn't a Will Howard out there. Miller and Jackson Arnold, I believe, were the two that I saw at the top of the list. Neither of those guys, are going to get drafted where Cam's going to get drafted this year. Neither of those guys are Heisman candidate level. So yeah, you love to see, when you turn on the film, you love to see, okay, this guy's going against top competition and he's cooking them. So yeah, I would love to sign up with that, or at least just take a look. And I wanted people to take a look. I wanted people to hear what Coach Norvell had to say. And my hope is just that Coach Norvell was reaching out to the right people, because that was my concern, was that, hey, man, they've evaluated talent poorly. They're either not talking to the right people, or they're not getting the right people. And so, that's that was my concern. And I think they're definitely, trying to address that.
All right. Last thing I'll ask you about this topic, and then the 335 question will close us out for tonight. You are still slated to be making your way to the East Coast later this week. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Yeah, we'll fly in Thursday night, and we need Tally rocking, on Friday. We need Duce to feel the love, so that we can make him the second Robinson Nole.
There you go. Outstanding. Well, that's Thursday into Friday. He'll be here on campus, and I hope we get to cross paths in person for the first time. It's only fitting, I would think, before the holiday season, that maybe we can have a glass together and just say hello instead of talking to each other via Zoom.
That'd be great. Yeah. No, I'm fired up, man. I can't wait. I haven't been there in a way too long, and I'm so excited to see how everything's changed, because I know I've seen pictures and video and all types of stuff where I'm just like, that looks unrecognizable to the place that I left. So
you will
very excited.
You will not believe how different it is. It's wild.
Yeah.
So
very excited.
to the final question we have from Garrett tonight, asking about the 3-3-5. That's coming down the line, a Tony White breakdown. Gus Malzahn will be next up on the channel. But just you put on the cap as both an offensive mind and a defensive mind. You play both positions.
Yeah.
So how would you attack a 3-3-5 defense? What makes it challenging? I think that's a great way to ask about what Tony White's going to bring to the table for Florida State.
Yeah, I think so. What makes it challenging is you don't know who is fitting the run where. So when there are 4 down linemen, you can assume that the 4 guys that are down are going to be responsible for those 4 gaps that they're in or the gap next to them. Well, with only 3 down, now there's 2 spots. So there's only 1 spot that's in question, essentially. 1 gap that's in question. Now, as you add tight ends, this is why like the Shanahan stuff has become in vogue, the last couple years, is because when you add people closer to the line of scrimmage, you add a run gap that the defense has to account for. So as a defensive coach now, if I take one of those down linemen and put them on the second level, now you don't know which gap they're responsible for. So they can add to a gap late, and they can add to multiple gaps, both pre and post snap. So just say I line up on the left side on the outside gap, I could still be responsible for the inside gap on the left side, which would be called the A gap. So you can line up in the C gap 5 yards off the ball and then still be responsible for the A gap on your side. If you're a defensive lineman and you do that, if you're in a 4 down, you can't get that far without running into another body, which is why you can't do it. So the 3-3-5 allows the offense or the defense, to be more versatile in who is going where. The same principle applies to pass coverage. Because I took one person away from the front, I now have one person that I could potentially add to the back. And so now essentially, like what I like to do is you have 2 flex players on each side. So I could be adding 5 to the run, or I could be bringing 8 to the pass, but you don't know from snap to snap. Am I only rushing 3, or am I bringing those 2 flex players? So you like to have 2 guys on either side of the ball that are good at going forward and going backwards. Now that's pretty rare in terms of like that ability to do that. You get that because when you're going forward against 250 to 300 pound people.
Yep.
And then obviously when you're going backwards, there's a level of athleticism that you have to backpedal, open your hips, turn and run, do all of these things, right? So it's really hard to find those players, but when you do find them, the Derwin Jameses of the world, they're worth their weight in gold. So that's what makes it hard. What people always did in the beginning of the 3-3-5, the way to attack it was just at downhill zone runs. It's just like, if we could just get downhill, and those gaps aren't accounted for, but teams got really good at it. The defenses got used to it. They got comfortable and they started adding to those gaps more proficiently. And teams got good defensively covering those gaps, even in a 3 down. Because in the beginning, it was just like, why don't you just run the ball at 3 down defenses? That's what everyone would try to do. So then those guys got really good, really proficient at stopping that because they knew that's what was coming. And so, so that's what makes it the 3-3-5 challenging is if you have the right personnel, and part of what makes the 3-3-5 amazing or great is you are more likely to have a 200 to 220 pound athlete that can go forward and backwards than Jared Verse. It's just that those guys you don't have a lot of them. And when you have one, you don't have another one. So if he gets hurt, we're screwed.
Yep.
We have no answer for if I'm running a 4 down, I also got to have a 3 technique and a 1 technique. I got to have 2 guys that can play inside. If I run just a 3 down, those 2 become 1 person, and now I can have way more depth at the position. So now if you only need a nose, you can have 3 guys play 1 position as opposed to having 2 guys that are playing and only 1 backup for 2 spots.
Yep.
That's what I loved about it when I started running, 3 down stuff, was it gave you a level of depth that you couldn't have. And then playing the linebacker safety body, you tend to have more of those. There's more guys that are between 200 and 230 than there are 250 to 300, that can be physical and athletic enough up front to play. So that's what makes it challenging for both sides. That's what makes it challenging for defenses, in terms of getting the right personnel. And then that's what makes it challenging for offenses is, are those flex players, those apex players, do they move forward or backwards better? And are they moving forward? Is one moving forward and the other moving backwards, and vice versa? Which one is the fourth? If you're going to rush 4,
Right.
Which one is it? And that's what the teams that do it well are the teams that just they always rush 4. You just don't know where they're rushing. And somehow, if you have really good coaching, the 4th guy is always adding at the right spot at the right time. And that's based off of tendencies, where you believe an offense wants to run. If I know a team runs counter, am I going to slant my defensive line into the gap where I believe they're going to run counter? Or am I going to slant them away and then bring a second level linebacker to make that play? And that all comes down to like who you believe are your playmakers are.
Yeah.
If I believe I have linebackers, playmaking linebackers, I slant the line away from the counter, so they have to block those guys, and then I bring my linebacker to fill that spot. If I believe I have playmaking defensive linemen, I try to slant them into the counter, and I have the linebackers playing, what's called fallback technique, which is opposite the slanting lineman. So it's all fun. What's great about, again, the 3-3-5 is just the versatility that it has. You're really not in a 3-3-5. You're in whatever defense you want to be post snap if you choose to use it that way.
It sounds like both coordinators are going to be very malleable to whatever they have, which is nice to hear, because it felt like we were, very predictable on both sides of the ball in certain circumstances last year. This is the last thing I'll ask you about the 3-3-5, because today's news, the player personnel news, was that Daryl Jackson announced he's returning for another season. And so this is a 6'5", 6'6", something about people that are that tall, but 325, 330 pound athletic defensive interior lineman. He's not Braden Fisk athletic, but he's not a plugger either. So in a 3-3-5, if you've got a body type like that, does he have to play over the ball, or can he play across the line at different positions?
That was the other thing that I loved about when I learned about the 3 down, and that I did, was you can play your best lineman in any of those 3 spots. And that when you have a guy that's athletic and big enough and physical enough, like, you don't have to just put him at nose and then the offense can double team him on every snap. I can change, put him somewhere else. And I believe, I want to say the old one of your Tampa Bay Bucks teams used to do this. I remember, being a big fan of how they use it. Might have been Warren Sapp or someone, but I feel like they were a 4 down.
We were 4. I mean, there was a brief moment where we weren't, but yeah, it was 4. It was to Tampa 2. They just let him.
Yeah. There was some defense that I'm thinking about where it's just like you had a dominant nose, but you could put him at end every now and again.
They do have one now in Vita Vea. They do that.
Yeah. That might be what I'm thinking about. I might be thinking of Vita Vea. It might be now. I was thinking there's an old one. But yeah, that's that's the thing that you want, is like, you want them to not be able. To me, it's like taking an offensive standpoint. of like creating matchups and doing that on defense. It's like, I'm going to make you block this guy.
Yep.
You know, and so I'm going to put him in, like, we term it. I think I got this from either Kirby or Dan Lanning, is like, find the donkey. Like, who is the guy on the offensive line that sucks? And so when I need a play, I can take, you know, the best guy and I can move him to one of those 3 spots.
Yep.
And he could be on the edge. He could be in the 3 technique, which is over the guard, over the outside shoulder of the guard. He could be on the inside shoulder of the guard. He could be wherever he wants. And that's, again, the beauty of the 3 down is you can do that. In a 4 down, you got to have better structure, more structure. Those guys have to be in more specific spots. You can't just move a guy, you know, because the numbers, the way the number count works. So, yeah. So I love that. Hey, I keep seeing Duce in the chat. It's DUCE. We got to make sure we get that. It's the old Duce span. I believe he's gone, right? Did he
that's
leave?
right. He just transferred.
Yeah. We got to make sure everybody knows it's DUCE.
We'll see if he makes I don't know if they still sell programs for the games, but we'll see if he makes the programs next year. Regardless, what a great opportunity, Dominic, to be in this position, to be traveling all over the country again 2 years later for interviews and experiences like this. I think everybody here extends the warmest of wishes, not because we want to see a return, but just like literally, you know, you've been with us for a few years now doing breakdowns. And so we're invested. We hope your travels are safe from the West Coast over here in Tallahassee, and we hope they knock your socks off. And even if not, okay, well, we wish Duce, you know, success wherever it is, but we certainly hope, I think just like you do, we certainly hope it's in the garnet and gold, man.
Absolutely, man. I'm super excited, fired up. Like I said, man, let's turn up Tally this week so we can get Duce out there. Because I'll be very happy to see him in the garnet and gold, just as happy as you guys would be.
Outstanding.
You know, but more than anything, we want him to find the right spot. We're just hoping that it's our place.
Yes, we can all agree on that. Hit the like button if you agree that it would be great if Florida State was the spot for Duce. But we thank Ira Schoffel for obviously working with us for the first half of the program and sitting behind the scenes. You know what? He didn't buzz in, so I guess that means he liked the questions we were asking.
Could we not go the 3 screen with Ira? What? I was waiting for Ira to pop in.
I was too with this. Usually this means hey, I got something. So I was waiting for that. But our thanks to Director Ben Spicer behind the scenes, always to our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voris, and everybody who submitted questions tonight. We really appreciate you. Stay tuned to Warchant TV tomorrow morning. You've got Wake Up Warchant. You've got before Seminole headlines at 1 o'clock, 4 press conferences from Florida State's newest coaches. That includes Herb Hand, Evan Cooper, Tim Harris, and who's the 4th one? Oh, no. Terrence Knighton, pot roast. How could I forget? The new defensive line coach will be available tomorrow from 11 to 12 o'clock. So stay tuned, everybody, to Warchant TV. Head over to the website. And thanks, Dominic. Again, I hope you have a great night.
Yeah, can't wait. Yeah, can't wait to hang out with you, Tom, man. Love you guys.
Sounds
good. Go Noles.
Go Noles. Good night, everybody.